If you ever wanted to kill somebody, just take them on a cruise.
Exactly what has happened to their daughter is a mystery.
Because you'll never get caught.
Welcome to my channel. If you're new here, hi, hello, welcome. I am Sherrilyn and I am so glad you found me. Today we have so much to get into. I feel like this case that we're going to talk about today is like really consumed people, and it's like re-energized a disappearance from the 90s thanks to a new documentary that just came out. But I was actually floored how much information I didn't know that I found out after the documentary that wasn't included in it. So we gotta talk, okay? All right, so this happened in March 1998 when 23-year-old Amy Lynn Bradley boarded a Royal Caribbean cruise called the Rhapsody of the Seas with her parents Ron and Iva and her younger brother Brad, and they were headed for a week-long Caribbean cruise that departed San Juan, Puerto Rico on March 21st. Tragically, only 3 days into their voyage, Amy vanished without a trace from the ship while it was nearing the port of Curacao. And to this day, her disappearance remains a agonizing, unsolved mystery, but there is so much more to this than just assuming she fell or she jumped, and we're going to go through all of that. Like I said, this is the subject of the newest blockbuster limited series documentary on Netflix called Amy Bradley is Missing. And like I said, if you think that this is a case of she fell or jumped, buckle up, baby. There is so much that was left out of the documentary. I don't know. I guess like we can theorize, you know, maybe in the comments, be respectful, but I feel like I'm going to leave it at, I feel like there was a lot of focus on her sexuality, I believe, I would like to say, as opposed to putting in more crucial details. I'm struggling to say what I want to say. That's how I feel though. Not that it couldn't have been touched, but we'll get into it, okay? Let's start with who Amy was. Amy was born on May 12th, 1974 in Petersburg, Virginia, and grew up in an extremely close-knit family in Chesterfield County. Family is and was everything to Amy. She was extremely close to her parents and her younger brother, Brad, who was 2 years younger than her. Friends and family describe Amy as friendly, outgoing, adventurous. She had a bright smile and a love for music and sports. From a very young age, she actually excelled tremendously in athletics, especially basketball, which earned her a college scholarship. And at 23, she had just graduated with a degree in physical education and had big plans for her future. In fact, Amy was preparing to start a new job at a computer consulting firm the Monday after the cruise and had recently moved into her own apartment and adopt a bulldog named Bailey, who she was supposed to pick up when she got home. I wanted to mention that because this is like try to put yourself in those shoes, right? This is a very exciting time in a young woman's life, and this is something that Amy and her friends were really excited for. I really want to even go like, I always was going back to the new apartment thing because I remember when that was me, you know, I had the apartment. Everyone would come over, get ready before we go. It was so fun. And yes, I had a job that I loved at that time too. There's something about that first apartment and independence and being like the spot to go to. So that's where I was kind of like thinking and putting myself in her shoes of just being like, it was such an exciting time. Now, Amy's father, Ron, was an insurance executive who had won the family cruise as a sales incentive reward for work. I feel like a lot of insurance companies do that actually. It's like always a cruise for like the top earners. And so Ron was the one who won that for his company. And according to Amy's mom, it did take a little bit of convincing to get Amy to want to go on the cruise. I think she described Amy as being like a little apprehensive about like the big boat thing and about being just out on the ocean, kind of stranded. Totally get it. Her family said though, once they got on the ship, she seemed to put her fears aside and was having a lot of fun with her family, just cautiously aware of avoiding the rails and kind of looking at her family for encouragement and convincing that like it's gonna be okay. She never like looked over. I think that that's important to know also. On March 21st, 1998, the Bradleys joined over 2,000 other passengers on the Rhapsody of the Seas for a Caribbean cruise. The ship's route started in San Juan and was stopping in Aruba, Curacao, St. Martin, and St. Thomas. Honestly, my best friend and I watched this together and we were like, context aside of like the documentary, it did sound like it would have been a beautiful cruise. By Monday, March 23rd, they had left Aruba and were cruising overnight towards Curacao, scheduled to dock there the next morning. So while they are cruising to their next destination, that night, the Monday night, the ship threw a Mardi Gras themed party at its 24-hour dance bar, which Amy and her brother Brad attended. There were photos and videos released later by the FBI to show that Amy seemed to have been having a really great time that night, smiling and dancing with other passengers. And at one point, Amy was seen on video socializing with one of the members of the ship's live band. The live band was called Blue Orchid, and one of the people that she was interacting with was 38-year-old bass player named Alistair Douglas, who at the time went by the nickname Yellow. By many accounts of witnesses who were there, they say Yellow took a particular interest in Amy. The two danced together, they had drinks, and several passengers noticed that he was getting a little too close to Amy on the dance floor, so much so that she did tell him, like, back off a little bit there, friend. And Amy did even mention that to her brother later, but still, like, the vibe seemed friendly. It was kind of like, okay, like, you dance there, I'll dance there. And they went on. Amy continued to enjoy herself. Yellow said that around 1 a.m., he had to leave the party to return to the staff quarters because crew members have curfews of being in, like, the passenger areas past a certain time. So he claimed around this time, he just said goodbye to Amy and headed to his cabin through the staff elevator while Amy stayed behind at the club and continued partying with friends and Brad for a couple hours later. It was around 3:30 a.m. on March 24th, 1998 that the Bradley siblings decided to call it a night and head back to their cabin on deck 8. Now, according to the ship's electronic key logs and Brad's own recollection, Brad entered the family suite at 3:35 a.m. and Amy walked in shortly after around 3:40 a.m. So inside the cabin, allegedly their parents were asleep. Amy and Brad stepped onto the suite's private balcony to just wind down. And Brad said that Amy was feeling like a touch of seasickness. And so she just told Brad she was going to stay out on the balcony for a while just to get some fresh air and settle her stomach. So Brad gave his sister a hug and headed to bed. And he said that the last words he said to her was good night and I love you, which he is eternally grateful for. At roughly 5:30 a.m., Amy's father, Ron, was stirring around, feeling restless, and peeked onto the suite's balcony where he said he saw Amy. He said he could see Amy's legs from her hips down, and she looked like she was resting comfortably and that the sliding balcony door was closed. Now, Ron specifically noted that the door was closed because he thought, like, I would have shut it myself, is what he was saying, if it was left open. So feeling reassured that the kids were all in the cabin and sleeping, he dozed back off just for a little bit. About a half an hour later at 6:30 a.m., Ron woke up again, and this time he said it was like with this instinct, this jolt of unease. At this point, he notices that the balcony door was now open about 14 to 16 inches and the lounge chair was empty. So he gets this funny feeling creep over him, especially when he looks around and notices that Amy's flip-flops were still in the room and she hadn't taken her ID or even her room key. The only thing that he noticed that was missing was her lighter, her cigarettes. And so that suggested, maybe she just stepped out on one of the decks for a quick smoke. So when she didn't come back right away, like after the time that it would have taken for a smoke, he's sitting there thinking, okay, well, maybe she's on one of the decks watching the sunrise or grabbing a coffee or watching the boat come into Curacao because it was just arriving to the dock around this time and taking photos. I guess Amy was an avid photographer. Her family said she packed about 15 rolls of film to take photos for a coffee table collage that she wanted to put together for her new apartment. Ron left the room to go look for Amy. He said he went to all of the main areas of the ship, like the deck above, the jogging track, the cafe, and spent about an hour looking for her in familiar spots that the family had already gone to on the days prior, but could not find Amy. So by 7 a.m., with the ship now docked in Willemstad, Curacao, Ron's in a panic and goes and wakes up Iva to tell her that Amy was missing. Now, this timing could not have been worse because passengers were preparing to disembark for the day in Curacao. So they're fearing that Amy is still on board, but in danger. So the Bradleys immediately go to ship's officials to let them know that they can't find Amy. And if you've watched the documentary, I'm sure you are feeling the same rage I felt inside. made towards the cruise director. I don't even think we can put a clip in here because it'll get copyright flagged. I'm just saying, go see for yourself. And if you know, you know. That guy. The Bradleys were absolutely floored that their pleas were completely dismissed. They were told that an announcement that early to look for Amy could not be made because it could disturb the other passengers, and they can't just stop the itinerary and prevent people from disembarking just to try to find their daughter, because like they've got to keep on schedule and other people are having a vacation. So the ship's gangway was lowered as scheduled, and that morning they watched hundreds of passengers pour into Curacao, potentially carrying crucial witnesses or even the person responsible for Amy's disappearance and has Amy. There was no general alarm issued, no immediate lockdown of the ship was ordered. It wasn't until roughly 7:50 a.m., nearly 2 hours after Amy had last been seen, that the first page was made, and it said, "Miss Amy Bradley, please come to the purser's desk." By then, Iva, Amy's mother, said most of the passengers had already disembarked for the day. And I can't imagine the feeling that she would have felt, because she said she's just on deck trying to watch, like see if she sees Amy or anything, and she's just seeing like clusters of tourists just filing off, becoming more and more frantic, because she knows that if Amy was in a position where she was still on the ship or could hear that announcement, she would have immediately gone to them, and she didn't. Finally, almost 2 hours later, the Bradleys thought they were getting somewhere when the ship's captain said he had organized a Charlie drill, which is a complete search of the vessel in every nook, cranny, room. But by late afternoon, when the Bradleys met with the captain, he said that there was no trace of Amy on the ship. And it seemed like his thoughts were, she fell. To make matters even worse, they were informed that the ship was carrying on as schedule. So still carrying on as schedule after the fact that they know Amy has not been found at this point, has not answered any of these pages, and they're planning on leaving Curacao that evening, continuing on to the next port in St. Martin and St. Thomas, as if nothing had happened. Unable to imagine leaving the area where, Amy might be, Ron, Iva, and Brad disembarked and stayed behind in Curacao, moving their search for her now off of the ship onto the island. Now, I wish I had a camera just recording my thoughts and reactions during this documentary, because I swear I went through every possible emotion and theory, and within minutes, it was constantly changing. Initially, I was I think she did fell, or she slipped, or maybe she was sleepwalking while she was on the balcony and accidentally went over. But as I heard authorities from the area explain the search, especially the water, and having lifelong knowledge, of being there, I moved away from that. So I know a lot of people have been asking me in my life, do you think she fell or do you think she jumped? I'm like, no. And so much of it goes to hearing authorities who grew up in that area talk about how the waters and the current works in that area. So allegedly there was a search of the surrounding waters in case Amy had somehow fallen overboard. For 4 days, the Coast Guard searched the ocean along the ship's route and found nothing though. And like I said, the local authorities explained that had she gone into the water, the likelihood of not finding anything is highly unlikely. They said just because of how close the ship was to the shore, there would be at least clothing, pieces of clothing or limbs at the very least, if there was a shark attack. Even if I know it sounds gruesome, I'm so sorry, but even if she had gotten caught up in the propeller, there would have been something. So the more I look into this and the more I just focus on that and remember, the further I go from her taking her own life and deliberately jumping or even accidentally falling. Like I said, by all accounts, Amy was in high spirits during the vacation. She was looking forward to her new job, her apartment, all of her friends being over there to hang out. She had this new puppy that she was excited to get home for. And not only that, she deliberately stayed away from the ship's railings. Her family has really enforced that she was reluctant to go near them and needing reassurance from her mom and dad and brother whenever she got near the edge that it's going to be okay. Now the FBI was notified of Amy's disappearance and began an investigation, but unfortunately by the time they were notified and agents were flown out, it wasn't until March 25th and the Rhapsody had already gone en route and it was already at its next stop. So FBI agents, they catch up with the ship when it docks in St. Thomas on March 26. And there they learned that there wasn't a thorough, Charlie drill that was done like the captain had said. And at this time, they conduct an extensive search of the ship, treating it like a potential crime scene. They brought in search dogs, interviewed crew and passengers. Unfortunately, though, nothing was found. And a huge part of that has to do with the FBI taking so long to get to the ship, and the ship having already a crime scene, if you will, being contaminated. They had already moved on. So all of that crucial time had passed, and many people had come and gone from the ship. So if Amy had been potentially smuggled off the ship in Curacao, this window is so closed, which is absolutely infuriating. For the days until the FBI had caught up with the ship, the Bradleys had stayed behind in Curacao. And, they're trying to talk to everybody on the island, plastering it with flyers, trying to find Amy. They're working with local police to try to chase down any leads. Unfortunately, in those early days, there was just really nothing to go on. They've never experienced anything like this. They're feeling lost and helpless. So they flew back to meet up with the ship where it was docked when the FBI was conducting its search, grabbed all of their belongings, and then they flew back home, where they immediately set up a command station and started contacting dozens and dozens of news outlets and media. Now, not long after returning home, Brad and his father, Ron, returned back to Curacao to search again. And Iva said she stayed home for a number of reasons, just to do what she could there with the resources there and, dealing with local authorities, because now this is very confusing, right? You've got your local authorities where you're home and you're a US citizen, so is Amy, but then this is happening in international waters. Also, once you dock, now that's a new agency. I don't think people understand the sheer volume of complexities in something like this. And Iva also said she wanted to stay back home because she thought going back there and leaving without Amy again would completely break her. She would not be able to go on. When they went back to Curacao, though, there was a brief period of time where Brad and Ron were really hopeful that they were going to find Amy. Pretty early on into arriving, they spoke with a cab driver who claimed that he recognized Amy from a flyer. And he said that a woman matching her description had approached him shortly after the cruise had docked the day that she disappeared. And according to the driver, he said that this young woman, who he believed was Amy, approached him in a panic and asked him where she could find a phone. And he said he pointed in the direction of where the phones were and then watched her frantically go off, but it was in the opposite direction of where he had just directed her. Now, they had always felt just from that instant of realizing that she was missing, that she did not jump or fall. And so hearing that she was potentially seen alive on the island just minutes after they were begging the crew not to let passengers disembark was infuriating, but hopeful. Brad said also while they were there, another eerie incident happened while he and his father were driving around with the local authorities. He said that he heard somebody call out Brad, and he believed it was from this passing van while they were driving. And he swears he heard Amy's voice, the voice he's heard his whole entire life. And he gets everybody to, turn around, pull over the van. But when they did, it was just the driver. There was no passenger. There was no Amy. Brad and Ron had to leave the island not long after without Amy. But due to the efforts of Amy's loved ones in those early days, her disappearance did make headlines, and shows like Unsolved Mysteries started featuring her story. This leads to further belief for me that Amy was alive and that her disappearance was possibly intertwined with crew on the ship. So in the course of retracing Amy's activities, last steps, several troubling details about that last night that she had on the ship came to light. And apart from the bass player Yellow, at least one other crew member had showed an unusual interest in Amy, if you will. So the night before she vanished, her family said that a waiter in the ship's restaurant had approached the Bradley family, and Iva described him as creepy, and even said that Amy said, "Oh, that guy was a little bit creepy," because he had invited Amy to go with him to a bar in Aruba when the ship was docking at that port. So they kind of like laughed it off, and she was like, "I will not be going alone," but then also like found it really odd that this like crew member is coming up to this like young female passenger and wanting her to come alone off of the ship with him. Now, what they wouldn't have known at the time was that, and I mean, this is just like coincidental, but like still like, I don't know, it's like gives you chills like when you compare these types of things. But the bar that he was wanting Amy to go to was Carlos and Charlie's, which is the last bar that Natalie Holloway was at on March 30th, 2005. So, just a few years later. At the time, they didn't think much of it, too deeply, just that he was creepy. But, because Amy said no, she didn't go. They were just kind of like, oh, okay, whatever, and moved on. But afterwards, the Bradleys did notify the FBI about this interaction. They did interview the waiter, and he had claimed that he had nothing to do with Amy's disappearance, but started to kind of like plant seeds of looking at the parents. Said that the conversation he had with the family was that they were asking him about procedures, like of what happens when someone falls off the ship. Now, Iva and Ron and Bradley claim like this never happened, and even asked the FBI to give him a polygraph. Allegedly, this polygraph never happened, but the Bradleys are convinced that this waiter is involved somehow in what happened to Amy because of his interest in Amy, but also because like he's fabricated this story about this conversation. So like, why would you immediately do that and like redirect to something else that never happened if you had nothing to hide and that this was just like an innocent invite to go party? The Bradleys believe that Amy was kidnapped and that this kidnapping was probably originally planned for Aruba, but then over the course of, the travel and the partying, heading to Curacao and having a connection, like a friendly banter with Alistair Douglas, Curacao Wharf now became Plan B. And that might sound far-fetched to some people. To that, I would just say I would do some extensive research into like how trafficking humans, women, children, anybody really happens. When it comes to Alistair Douglas, Yellow, he was interviewed after Amy's disappearance. He gave a few statements as well that raised some eyebrows. He had confirmed that he and Amy had hung out at that club until about 1 a.m., that they danced and they drank together. And then he also mentioned, like they were close enough and spent enough time together that he noticed that Amy was like a chain smoker. And that was like very odd to him because like where he grew up in Grenada, like that wasn't something that he saw. He also said that Amy was quite open with him and shared personal stories with him. She said that her father was an insurance salesman and he won this trip, and the timing, was curious because, the family had recently discovered that Amy was a lesbian and that he quote unquote forced her to come on this cruise. I mean, in order for that to happen, you'd have to like be able to like say like this was all orchestrated within like Ron's company and department of just being like, oh, like you won the cruise. Like, no, this actually happened. So to me, I don't know if it's just because like I have family and friends like in the insurance industry. It's like you'd have to have so many people involved to be like, can you set up that I won this cruise so I can take my daughter on it and convince her that she's not a lesbian? Like, no. Like I said, Amy's sexuality was a pretty decent focus on the documentary. And though her friends and even former girlfriends said it was hard news for her parents to accept initially, her family loved her so much and were so much more concerned, it seemed like, from kind of like how it was going to shape her life and acceptance from others. You have to keep in mind, this was the 90s and it was a very unpredictable and scary time for the LGBTQ community. So this claim that Amy had this big conflict with her dad, that's never been corroborated by Amy's family. And a lot of people that are close to Amy are even skeptical that she would have even said something so private to this guy that she had just met. And it's just like him kind of like putting pieces together, as news was like circulating about like who Amy was. Now, what I think is really concerning is that there are multiple witnesses who saw Amy and Yellow together in the hours around her disappearance. So though he said he left Amy around 1 a.m., two young women came forward to report that around 5:45 to 6 a.m. on March 24th, they saw a woman matching Amy's description in an elevator with a man from the band, Yellow, heading up towards the ship's top deck. And this was just before the ship docked in Curacao. Another witness, separate to like this like duo of friends, a college student named Crystal Roberts, also gave a similar account. Crystal said that she was on the upper deck around same time, like 5:30, 5:45 a.m. when she saw Amy walk by with the bass player Yellow. And she said about 10 minutes later, she saw Yellow again walking around, and this time he was by himself. So he has said that that was the last time he saw Amy. It was at 1 a.m. when he left and he had to go to the crew quarters. Now, three separate witnesses. You've got the two girls that were friends, saw him with who they believe to be Amy, and then another friend, like separate from these girls, did not know these girls, around the same time, seeing him again. So what happened at 1 a.m.? This witness who saw Alistair Douglas and Amy on the upper deck said that Amy had her camera with her. It was believed by her family that she had gone to the upper deck to grab photographs of, coming into Willemstad and the canal. And she had also had what they believed was a coffee with her. So she said she saw Alistair give Amy a drink that contained a dark liquid. And she testified for a federal grand jury in Richmond, Virginia about this. Now, to cast even more suspicion on Yellow, Brad, Amy's brother, told Unsolved Mysteries that he had bumped into Yellow the morning of Amy's disappearance. And the first thing that he said to Brad was, "Hey man, I'm sorry to hear about your sister." And Brad remembered this because he said it was unsettling because this was the early stages of realizing that maybe something had happened to Amy. They didn't know. The ship's security and the Bradleys were who Brad believed were the only people who knew that there was something going on with Amy. At that point that he approached Brad, there was no announcement that was made.
That morning, only the Bradley family and the ship's security knew Amy was missing. But according to Amy's brother, so did the bass player.
Hey, Brad, sorry to hear about your sister. I feel badly. I know you...
It's a really odd thing to say that early in the stages of this thing, Nobody knew except for us, or my family and I, and security.
He's been questioned on multiple occasions, and as far as I know, he still claims that he hadn't seen Amy since 1 a.m. His cabin and the band's quarters were apparently searched, but there was no sign of Amy. To this day, he maintains his innocence. He's done several interviews. He insists that he has no knowledge or involvement in what happened to Amy specifically, if there was a disappearance, that he had nothing to do with it. That being said, though, he does remain this main suspect in the eyes of the public. And not only that, even his own daughter, who appeared in the documentary, has suspicions. She claims that after that 1998, cruise tour that he had done, you've got the crew that go out and they do a few of them. He had come back home after his schedule. And her mom said that when he returned, his behavior had completely changed. And she found this bizarre collection of photographs of young women. And she was never really given an explanation about what it was, why he had this. So during the documentary, his daughter calls him on speakerphone. And again, he denies knowing anything, but it's a pretty powerful and heartbreaking moment to see, that she struggles with this and that this is her own father. And you see her just listening to him and his denial and his defensiveness, I would say. And then also being that's, my dad. Why am I feeling this? Why are there so many questions that I can't get past and you can't really answer? And are you involved? I think the whole photo thing is really creepy. Obviously, it doesn't definitively prove any involvement of what could have happened to Amy, but these types of things have not helped eliminate suspicion around him. But there's something else that involves photos that's extremely unsettling. So on cruises, there are professional photographers on board who take pictures of the guests during, events and before dinner and put them on display for purchase. So back in the day, it was printed out in gallery style. You'd go up and pick your picture. Now it's usually digital. But the night before Amy's disappearance, she and her mom went to go look at the gallery. And her mom said that they were looking around and they couldn't see any pictures of Amy. And they asked the photographer, and he distinctly remembered printing pictures of Amy and walks over to where he remembers putting them, and they're gone. None of the family had come to purchase these or take these from this gallery. At that moment, they didn't really read too much into it, but it's all these weird things that add up. And it's extremely eerie to think that somebody could have gone in there, taken them, and possibly used that to circulate to potential buyers in a human trafficking ring. Again, I know it's hard to allow yourself to go there, but these things happen. This is what her family believe. They believe this is exactly what happened to Amy. Iva has said multiple times that she believes it's a possibility that Amy was held, maybe hidden, maybe drugged and taken from the ship, or even lured under false pretenses of hey, let's let's go quickly here. I know a shop, or I know a guy, or whatever, and we'll come right back. And I do believe Amy was taken off the ship that day, that she didn't fall. And after hearing about, the sightings that there have been of her, because we're going to learn there are more than just, the cab driver's account, but also learning about one of the most hair-raising series of photos that was sent to her family. Yeah, I don't believe she fell. So over the years, there have been multiple accounts of eyewitnesses reporting that they saw Amy across the Caribbean. One of the earlier sightings was when two Canadian tourists, one of them, he lives in my province in Alberta. I believe he's in Calgary, not far from me. And he reported seeing a woman that he believed was Amy on a Curacao beach in August of 1998. It was a very brief but unsettling interaction with her that just stood out. So his name is David. He's an engineer, and he says he is certain that the woman he saw was Amy, and that she had two men on each side of her, and he noticed her because of the look in her face. She looked visibly upset. At one point, he said it almost, she was almost able to walk ahead a little bit towards him and looked like she was about to say something when one of these guys gets her attention and motions her away from them, and even briefly has this stare down with David. He says he is not 99% sure it was Amy. He is 100% sure the woman he saw was Amy. Had it not been for the fear in her eyes and the way, this guy looked at him, he probably would have never, remembered the moment. You pass by so many people if they're on vacation or on a beach, but it was those brief interactions that just he cannot forget. Besides that, what really gave him credibility was that he was able to describe tattoos matching the ones that Amy had, including one on her shoulder of a Tasmanian devil spinning a basketball, which is, what she had. So Amy had several tattoos, and I'm going to have a clip inserted here of her mom describing them and then just showing some sketches.
Tattoos. She's got a baby Tasmanian devil spinning a basketball on her left shoulder blade with a little beanie cap. She got a full scholarship for college for basketball, so that was a design she came up with. She's got a Japanese symbol on her right ankle, a few inches above her ankle bone. She's got a gecko lizard around her navel, and at the waistband, a little below on her back, she's got a Chinese symbol with some Chinese writing on the inside. Something little, her baby fingers curve in. She's got a scar on her left shin, beautiful green eyes.
Unfortunately, even though David's sighting seemed very promising that it was Amy, by the time he realized she was missing and reported it to authorities, too much time had passed, and when they went to the area to search, they didn't find Amy. There is another pretty credible witness. There's a lot of opinions about this one, and for good reason, who claims to have seen Amy a year after her disappearance. And unfortunately, this sighting also was not reported immediately. And for me, it is one of the most frustrating and disturbing and just upsetting, because it's interactions like this and going to establishments like this that keep people who run rings like this in business. So this interaction came from a U.S. Navy officer who claimed he saw Amy at a Curacao brothel in 1999, but didn't say anything at the time because he feared he would get in trouble for being in a brothel while stationed. So this was the report I'm going to read to you that was written on the Amy Bradley is Missing website. I highly recommend you go and check it out and see all of the photos there on there, of the areas and the people involved, and just the chilling reality of what is happening in places all over the world, okay? And how many people are involved in these types of things. And not one person who eyes you out and is that's the one. There are so many people involved to make this happen. So the report says that in January of 1999, Chief Petty Officer William Hefner of the U.S. Chandler went to the Stellaris Hotel in the area of Willemstad. The Stellaris Hotel was located directly across the street from the old cruise ship docks that are still still used when the Mega Pier, Harbor, and Bunker piers are full. Hefner was sitting in the bar area and noticed two women sitting together at a table. One was Caucasian and the other was Hispanic. At one point in the evening, the Caucasian woman walked over to him and told him that her name was Amy Bradley and she needed help. Hefner did not recognize that she was a missing person, but he did recognize that she was an American. He told her to go to the ships that were docked 5 minutes away for help. Amy told him he didn't understand. Her name was Amy Bradley and she needed help. It was then that two men approached Amy and sent her upstairs. Hefner did not report that he had seen Amy in the hotel. The hotel was off limits to Navy personnel because of its bad reputation, and he was close to retirement and feared any professional repercussions. According to the report, he was also married at the time. He said he tried to put the interaction out of his mind and didn't realize who she was until he later saw her photograph on the cover of the July 2001 People magazine. By the time he saw this, though, the hotel had already burned down. It had burned down, not already. I'm giving that's brand new information. Okay, the hotel had burned down. So he claims to have seen Amy in January of 1999, realized who she was in 2001, but unfortunately the hotel burned to the ground May of 2000. So by the time this is, brought to authorities, there's nothing left to go and search. Several years after that sighting, there was another sighting that came in 2005. It was from a woman named Judy who came forward saying that she saw Amy in a bathroom in Barbados. Judy claims that Amy was allegedly with three men who followed Amy in the restaurant while Judy was actually in the stall. And she's like, oh my God, I hear men's voices. And then overhears a conversation who she believes is Amy had with these men. And they're saying that there was an arrangement later that evening and she basically needed to be on point and be ready on time, and then they left. So Judy said when she got out of the stall, she approaches Amy and they're both standing at the sink at this point, and sensing that something's off, Judy strikes up a conversation and just asks the woman, what's your name? Are you here on vacation? She's like, she's not there on vacation, and says that her name is Amy. And Judy notices she's looking really anxious. And when she says Amy, it's very quiet, but Judy's trying to keep her talking, quickly build some sort of trust and rapport and get information. And she recognizes that she's got an American accent and asks where she's originally from. And she says that she thinks Amy said, I believe South Virginia, but now is I think it was just Virginia. And so Judy's I'm from the South as well. And I have a daughter your age. And Judy said, as she's, striking up this conversation with Amy, Amy gets this look in her eyes, almost agitated. I'm sure if you're aware that somebody's potentially listening to you, it's shut the fork up. I'm going to get in trouble. You could possibly get in trouble. So Judy just felt she needed to back off and leaves. And as she's leaving, the guys are standing outside of the bathroom, and she just kind of squishes her way through and is oh, excuse me, and beelines for her husband. And so she tells her husband about this interaction and how worried for this woman she is. She's there is something going on. He's just we don't know that. And what are you gonna do? If there's nothing, throwing out these allegations, or even if there is, it's dangerous for you to get involved. Now, after this encounter in the restroom, Amy was also seen walking on the sidewalks a block away from Broad Street, so within that area, I believe. And at this point, she was with four men. She's described with having four men completely surrounding her. So she's in the middle and no one's able to access her. Judy also tried to just forget about the whole interaction, but not long after getting home from the trip, she's watching my favorite Dr. Phil and saw an episode. I mean, I guess, this is the positive out of it, I guess, but saw an episode on Amy Bradley, immediately recognized her as the woman in the washroom, and she reports what happened to authorities. I think something so important to keep in mind here is that these are people who have no idea who one another are, who say that they saw who they believe Amy. And it's so eerie because all of them are they distinctly remember their interactions of the fear and being so sure of, once they see the picture, being that is freaking her. And there was just a reason to have that moment stick in their mind. And it's the things that they're saying are so similar, and the fear and identifying herself as Amy, but they don't know each other. It's not they heard oh yeah, they were just having a brief conversation, or calling in because the friends, they don't know each other. These are different years as well. Now, it was this year, the year of Judy's sighting, so 2005, that the family was also sent a series of photos that I cannot get passed, this was something for them to see with their own eyes and solidify that feeling that they had always had, that Amy was still alive. I've gone back and forth. Like I said, I've theorized till theorizing cows come home on whether or not I believe that something happened on the ship. And I just always go back to no. And I feel like there's like two main points about that, but the pictures always get me. So it was September 2005, the Bradleys receive a anonymous email. And in the email, I believe it was a link. I don't know if it was screenshots or a link that included photos of a young woman that was posted on a website called Affordable Adult Vacations, which was advertising escort services in the Caribbean. In these images, the woman, her name on the site is Jazz, looked alarmingly like Amy, but had like longer hair than Amy did in 1998 and very heavy makeup on. But her facial features caught the family's attention immediately, and I cannot imagine what they would have felt in that moment, because the hair on my arms stood up when I saw these pictures. Not only did the family feel like this was Amy, but they forwarded the images to the FBI, and the forensic expert who analyzed the photos reportedly called them a perfect match and firmly believes that it is Amy Bradley in those photos. And when you go through them, like from the tip of the nose, the distance of the eyes, the same imperfections in the brows, the shape of the lips, the distance from the nose to the lips, the widow's peak, the chin, like it's so chilling. And I've seen this be, quite the topic of, or point of contention on social media, where people are like, feel like you're either like hardcore, that is Amy Bradley, or you're like, no, it's not her and it doesn't look like her. I don't understand that. I looked in at like the ears, the distances, the shapes. I firmly believe, like, I'm like, my goodness. Also, you've got this expert who's like whole entire life is based upon like studying this type of stuff, who's like, that's her. Even if we are going to say that it isn't her, it is still such an important topic, point of conversation, and like understanding that this happens. Like the Bradleys have said, like, even if this is not our daughter, we believe it is. But if it is not Amy, this shows like the reality of human trafficking rings, that they do believe that Amy, was, I don't want to say involved in, because that makes it almost sound like she's a willing participant, but you know what I mean. I saw a really good point on TikTok, and I was like, yeah, great point, girl. It was like, if that is not Amy in the picture, fine. Who is it though? Not only has that woman not come forward to say that's me, or her family, if this is also like a human trafficking situation, come forward like to claim that woman, like who is it? No one has said that's not Amy Bradley after all of these years. The whole website situation also is like, oh, infuriating. And it is in a rabbit hole all on its own. And I wish that the documentary focused more on that. I could not believe, like when I had gone to the website, Amy Bradley is missing website, and going through all the information they have there, I get it. Like, there's only so much that you're limited to put a series together, but it was like multiple episodes. I'm like, baby, like you only did 3 episodes. Like we could have done 6. I would have sat, and I know I wouldn't have been the only one. And it's like, why did we miss so much of this? I don't know. Anyways, back to the website. The website's infuriating. Over the years, the website has changed domains and names. I'm sure that's very deliberate to, not have too much like eyes and attention and like follow up on it. But through the Wayback Machine, you're able to like see what it kind of looked like at that time. And I believe you like in order to do that, you need the URL. I should have asked Lily about this, because Lily Marston is just a Wayback Machine past investigator queen. But anyways, on the Amy Bradley is missing website, they have a lot of evidence that even though this escort business website, the name changes, the contact numbers are pretty much the same on many of them. So one of the main reoccurring numbers belongs to a Florida couple named Alfred and Jennifer Cotton, who were convicted, not charged, convicted in 2015 for running a sex trafficking ring in Dominican Republic and primarily running it from their home in Florida. Not only is Alfred Alfred's number, the one listed on the site, but he looked a lot like one of the sketches of another sighting of Amy in San Francisco. So as per the Amy Bradley is missing site, this was written on there. On April 18th, 2003, a witness was in San Francisco with her husband near Pier 39, not far from the Alcatraz tours. The couple stopped to listen to a street band along with about 20 other people who were listening to the musicians as well. The witness noticed a woman who looked somewhat familiar surrounded by two men. According to the witness, one of the men, the balding red-haired man, gave the woman some change to tip the band. The witness concentrated on the woman's face and realized the woman looked like Amy Bradley, who was profiled on America's Most Wanted. When the men noticed the witness studying Amy, they abruptly grabbed the woman's elbow and hustled her away from the crowd. As they were walking away, the witness said the woman, believed to be Amy Bradley, looked back and gave a pleading look. The trio disappeared quickly from the crowd. This woman provided her statement to the FBI in 2003 and worked with a sketch artist to make a composite sketches of these two men. So the sketch of the balding redhead looks freakishly like Alfred Cotton, in my opinion. Like I said, he and his wife were convicted in 2018 for being involved in sex trafficking in the Dominican Republic. And the arrest report said, Jennifer Cotton, 49, and Alfred Cotton, 50, a married couple, were arrested for facilitating sex tourism by U.S. citizens to the Dominican Republic through their company, Tropical Adult Vacation. Their arrests follow a 10-month investigation with the U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement and Homeland Security investigations. The defendants are each charged in the New York State Supreme Court indictment with one count of promoting prostitution in the third degree. The alleged family business for this husband and wife team was international sex tourism, said District Attorney Vance. Companies like the one charged in this case create a demand for sexual service of prostituted women aboard, many of whom may be trafficked individuals. According to court documents and statements made on the record in court, beginning in July 2011, the defendants operated a sex tourism company, Tropical Adult Vacation, through which they provided U.S. citizens with room, board, and the service of prostituted women at their hotel located in Boca Chica, a small town near the capital of the Dominican Republic, over the course of hundreds of trips. The defendants personally managed the TAV's, so Tropical Adult Vacations, business operations from their Florida residence, including posting advertisements on Backpage.com to solicit customers, operating TAV's website, and responding to email and phone inquiries. Customers could make payment in advance for their trips using credit cards, wire transfer, or direct deposit. Typically, once a customer arrived in the Dominican Republic, they were transported to the TAV hotel by the Cotton's locally based associate allegedly named Paco, who handled day-to-day operations. There, customers were allowed to select between several different prostituted women and would engage in sexual activity during stays ranging from 24 hours to 1 week. Though prices varied depending on the length of the customer's trip, they were typically charged approximately $1,500 for a weekend stay. Now, reading through the advertisements that was salvaged, through like the Wayback Machine that is posted on the Amy Bradley website, my blood felt like it was going to just bubble and boil through my skin, because this is concrete proof of sex trafficking, in my opinion. Sex work is legal in the Dominican Republic, but sex trafficking, having handlers, is not. And these advertisements alone show how many people are involved. Like I said, the company that the Cottons were involved in has changed names several times. So in 2004, there was an announcement on some forum for these types of arrangements that Adult Vacation Getaway and Affordable Adult Vacations had merged. There was a post that, customers were assured that the packages, rates, and services and facilities, all of that was going to be the same, meaning all of these people that are freaking involved too. And prior to this, it seemed like the business initially was ran, I think from the get-go, and then prior to it changing names and getting into the Cotton's hands, it was initially ran by a Greek man who moved to Canada named Alexis Zaglantis, and he had it under the name Alexis Club. I'm sorry, I know this is getting so confusing, but when the Cottons became involved after this point, after it was sold, and then it went like through like all of like the TAV, the AAV, adult vacation, adult arrangement vacation, tropical adult vacation, that seemed to have all been when the Cottons were involved. So their announcement on the website was, "Welcome to our new website. It has been a long time, but I can now say that Juan de los Santos and I are in full control of the Boca Chica Resort. Both Juan and I take pride in service of our guests, and if there's anything we can do to make your stay more enjoyable, please let us know. We will always do our best for you." So the contact information on that resort website, and then the ones that had constantly changed the names, was a local number and Alfred Cotton's phone number. He not only ran the resort, as per his own announcement, like the arrangements, but he also arranged yacht tours, which would explain transporting women, especially when you're seeing like someone's seeing Amy in Curacao and then they're seeing her over in Barbados. Like it's such a sickening eye opener to realize like how these types of people operate. So on top of having this as their family business, according to Jennifer Cotton's attorney, she also ran a daycare, but part of their, I don't know, defense, I guess, was, like, oh, like this was like a terrible mistake. She's running a daycare though, and now only cares for her husband, who by the time they were caught was wheelchair bound, they said, and had like a host of medical problems. So this is the most infuriating part, you guys, okay? You need to go to the Amy Bradley website and just like scroll through like all of the different like websites. I've got clips of it, like we'll try to put it up and not get copywritten for like having anything inappropriate, but like there is so much, like they were so involved in this and they received 5 years of probation. According to the judge, Alfred Cotton's poor health was a factor for that decision, the probation decision. It's like, are you joking? So like you can be a monster, destroy people's lives, and you could get sick though and everything's gonna be fine. Probation does not mean they're innocent. They pled guilty. They admitted to this and they were able to serve their probation in their home, the home that they were operating this freaking business from. Oh my God, I can't. I wanted to read another freaking testimony from the Tropical Adult Vacation website that was posted on the Amy Bradley website. And again, like this talks about the amount of people that are involved and kind of like how this goes down. So this is the testimony from this individual. Before I go any further, let me tell you a little bit about my friend Paco. I too had read all the glowing testimonies and taken them with a pinch of salt. I believe that he was probably a very nice bloke, but just like crazy paving, would not be all he was cracked up to be. I was wrong. A very knowledgeable and likable guy. He used to own and run the local gas station and therefore knows everyone and everyone knows him. If you walk down the beach and back with him, you will lose count of how many times you hear the words, "Hey, Señor Paco, ¿cómo estás?" On-site assistance. There's only one thing that needs to be said. Paco. He serves as the personal concierge for the guests and seems to be able to handle and deliver on all requests made of him. He definitely knows DR extremely well. All the locals know him, and having been a New York City taxi driver for a number of years, he knows Americans as well. Quite the combination. He also manages the chicas. He does so with the proper amount of fear and respect. In many cases, he serves as their father figure, counselor, and manager. You can tell while his primary concern is the guests, he keeps the chicas' well-being in mind at all times, and they truly appreciate that. Oh my God, I'm sure they would appreciate not having somebody ruling them, trafficking them. This was my first experience. So far, everything that I have read was true. I took $700 with me because I thought I would have to pay for extras. I read about the Paco's fee at the end and I wanted to make it home alive, so I thought that was enough cash. What I paid for was tipping a band, henna tattoos for the girls, and bubbles. Oh, I got one of those henna tattoos too. The Paco fee at the end was $40 for me. That covered my drinks at all the dinners and the drinks at the disco, and the flower I got for my second girl and whatever I can't remember. Your next great milestone is meeting Don Paco. Ha ha ha, I truly hope he reads this. An unassuming man in shorts and sandals driving a wee Chevy, the Paco mobile, steps into your life and changes it for you forever. If you want it or want it done, just ask. When he arrived each morning, myself and a couple other guests that like to walk would take our morning little walk and enjoy the smorgasbord of bare and nearly bare-breasted ladies sunning themselves on the beach. It was during these walks that I gained a large respect for him. him. Men and women both greeted him with such respect, and on one particular morning, one man addressed him as Don Paco. Paco takes care of his family, of which you become a part of when you get off the plane. When we went to the hotel, we were greeted by Chago, who had your beverage of choice ready for you. Chago did an outstanding job. He is at the hotel with you all the time. If Paco's not around, all you have to do is ask Chago, day or night, and he will take care of you. Ever since we left the club, Maria has been on my arm. It was so nice to have somebody that wanted to make your vacation an enjoyable one. Then off to the hotel we went. Once we got there, I met Carlos, and he was very helpful also. After I picked up my bag, on through customs with your last sheet. No delay. They sent me right on through. There was a long gauntlet of people waiting for arrivals. We skipped on through. Another gauntlet as you pass out the airport onto the cement slope. Be looking to your left near the roadway for Paco, like Gandhi. He was huddled in with the taxi drivers. We waited for one another to arrive and went to the Paco mobile, an old black Chevy Impala. The only air in Paco's car is the tires, but you soon realize that it's unnecessary with the windows down. Paco drove us to his club. This was the point everyone gets the same thought. Oh shit, this is where they break my legs and take my cash. As Paco drives up to the rundown looking place, actually quite nice inside, with a big dude standing outside the door. You are led into an old nightclub style place, not dark and dingy though, with at least 12 girls sitting waiting for you. I found this part a bit intimidating. You are introduced to each and they return to their seats. Paco had them all get up one by one, do a little pole dance. You can tell that some of the girls are intimidated by that. Intimidated or don't want to be there, forced to be. Like, oh my God, I can't. See, you guys see? Sorry. We were introduced then to Carlos. You will get to know him well. He will assist you with translations and other requests. Winky face. I think the best thing that really makes this all happen is the TAV staff. So Tropical Adult Vacation, the Cottons company, from Jennifer and Al to Paco to Carlos and the two other guys who make sure you get whatever you need. I had the pleasure of having Al and his brother at the resort for the last couple of days of my stay. I have never had such great service. What can I say? Paco is definitely the man. He's obviously well known, well liked, and well connected. The three guys that effectively run the resort, the two barmen and boatmen together with the maid, seem to be on top of things. I honestly have nothing bad to say about my trip. I was lucky enough to be there while Jen and Al were there visiting, and they were great. As noted on almost all previous posts, Paco is the man, the staff was excellent, and the other guests were really nice people. I had a really great time and will be visiting again in the next couple of months. There was a comment underneath that of someone that said, I also had the same privilege of meeting Al and Jennifer, who dropped in for a couple of days and got from him a much deeper understanding of the organization's values and what their goals are. I would have loved to have been a fly on the wall for that conversation. What's wrong with you? There's a bunch of testimonies and comments and stuff like that you can see like on the Amy Bradley website of just like they had already pled guilty and stuff, but it just like shows like the firsthand experience of their involvement is just, it's disgusting. The whole thing makes me want to puke. And when I came across a letter from Paco, also on the site, like I wanted to puke even more. So he refers to himself as the ringmaster. And so he's like, this is like a letter from the ringmaster, aka Paco. Hello to all you gentlemen. If you think my beasts / ladies are tame enough for you to take one home without the safeguard of finding out through me, the ringmaster, which are the beasts and which are the ladies, you're in for a surprise. This is a pile of shoes. Just pick one. It might fit you. But above all, there is one that is a size fits all. Come on, Paco. I already have enough trouble freaking reading. Just try one. I'm sure it will fit all of you. It is this way you guys come to my circus to enjoy the show and play with my ladies / beasts. Like, oh my, Paco, I want to Paco you in the throat and publicly stone you. I blame Chelsea for that analogy. She's like, let's bring back public stoning. And you know what? Like at this point, it's like, I don't think Jurassic jail is going to become a thing. Not anytime soon. I don't think we're there, technology, like advancement wise. And I feel like that's public stoning is attainable. Okay. You will find they are quite domesticated and well behaved. You ask them to kneel, get on all fours, do it donkey style, swallow. They'll even beg for you to send her money through Western Union. Ha. To make it short, the perfect pet to take home. You guys, this isn't made up. This is how sick. Like, this is the reality. This is the reality. But you're forgetting she is a B/lady, and it's due to my training and suites, the best pay in the business, and my whip, you are fired, that she behaves that way. Soon enough, you develop some rapport with one of my beasts/ladies and feel like you could come a second time to my circus. And you arrange through the normal channels for a second visit to my circus. And you come, but the beast lady has a mind of its own and gets the feeling she has you in her paws. And by the second day of your new trip, she starts behaving like that 4-letter word, WIFE, wife. And you start feeling that other 4-letter word, the shit. And I challenge you all to correct me on this. Things get back in track when you mention this other 4 magic letter word, Paco. From there, you start feeling like another 4-letter word, king, which is the way the beast/lady has been trained by me to treat you all the time. But also by this time, your brains are no more than a mass of useless silly putty. So much so, you think that the beast lady really loves you and start to exaggerate things, like I was pronounced dead and the beast lady resuscitates me. Your wallet is more than an open faucet, from which money flows as if water, sometimes $5,000 USD at a time. Or even still, the girls that go out and get pregnant and then tell you it is yours to support financially. What the are you trying to say, Paco? To finalize this message, thank God. Do you really believe this beautiful, well-mannered, perfect love maker and all other attributes that they adorn my well-trained beast ladies in their prime sexual stage of life are at home waiting for you to come in 3 or 4 months? We don't know what the you're trying to say. We don't know what you're trying to say, Paco. Let me bring you back to reality. Okay, yeah, because we need to be there. 90% of them are working at some other club and the rest is freelancing out on the streets or at home waiting for calls from her collection of customers she's gathered over time. As part of our arrangement to work for me, they are tested on a regular basis for disease so that you do not bring something home with you. Do you think that the beast lady that have left me are being tested now? Oh, so he's like talking about like anybody who tried to leave him. Proof is in the pudding. Get one of your friends to call her and tell her he met her at Paco some time ago and he is planning a visit to DR next month, and let's see what happens. This is just like, who puts this publicly? Questions why I'm writing this? The reason you are disrupting my business and bearing other guests from enjoying my well-trained girls. And at the same time, believe me, you are being plain dumb, a 4-letter word. On the other hand, some guests on first contact with Jennifer have told her they are coming down looking for a wife. She has passed the message to me, and I have pointed out a few of my ladies that due to their upbringing are suitable material to make a home together and a suitable guest. Notice that I said suitable guest. I said it because in 2 cases, the guest was not a suitable person to be married to a nice girl, and I advised the girl accordingly. Paco, the ringmaster. I don't know what the that meant. That was like, hey, want to come? I know what I'm doing here. So listen to me to, oh, you want to go listen to somebody else? Say my name. What? Oh my God. Yeah. Public stoning, like castrated. Like, I don't know. This is where I've been, you guys. This is the latest rabbit hole that I've been in. You guys have to go to the website. Just, I don't know, like take a Valium before you do, because like this will be like, I've been on it so long. I've, sat with my script for so long to like be able to try to present this to you in like a nice, cohesive, understandable way. And I'm still spiraling. So this is just like kind of like what you have in store. But I think it's so freaking important. Like this is right here, concrete proof. This is why I'm like, and I do not believe that Amy fell overboard. I do believe that she was a victim of human trafficking. But if we are going to have the conversation of no, she fell, okay. But like, what fuck is this? Like there are other women also like who this does and has and is happening to. So like your theories, they're endless. Like our theories, everyone's theories can be endless right now. But the bigger picture, leads me to believe that she did not fall or jump, okay? But that this is happening to other women as well. Now, Amy's brother Brad has been going on X or Twitter, whatever we're working with these days lately. He's shared even like more context and other, theories he and his family have had over the years. And he said that he was, him and his family were happy with the doc, but in order to include like everything, it would have needed to be like a 10-part series. And to that I say, like, I know it's so hard for families, like when they get approached with this situation and they're working with like a documentary and have that like large platform to be able to showcase the story. I think they pull back and don't realize like how much say and cooperation that they can have in it, where it's like, these are our requirements. informants. We do want all of this out. We do not want this to be like only a 3-part series. Like if you're taking it, then it's got to be like 6, because this is important information that needs to be out there. And I think really like honing into the human trafficking rings, you know, like exploring other missing cases, like just like dedicating an episode for that. Again, I get it. Like it's very complex. Okay. But when I was looking at the site, like just myself, like on the Wayback Machine, the photo directly under like who's named as Jazz, who we believe is Amy, it literally made me cry. I could not look at it because I felt so helpless. It wasn't of Jazz or like who we believe is Amy. This is another woman who clearly looks to be incapacitated and not even aware that this picture is being taken of her. She's sprawled out naked on this dilapidated bed. It's disgusting. Like, these are not conspiracy theories. This happens every single day. And for Amy's family, like that, whether or not it is what has happened to Amy, they believe that it has. And this is like, you know, they're now in their 60s and 70s and believe that their daughter is one of these trafficked women. And I've seen a lot of judgment towards them on social media, and it makes me kind of go into a protective daughter mode because I don't think people are aware of how much goes on behind the scenes to try to find Amy. It's like they're like, oh, why didn't you do this? What? Like they're doing it. You know, they have followed the leads when they receive them, but unfortunately, a lot of times, like these aren't immediately reported. Meaning, you know, you have so much time that's passed by, not only for Amy to be located, but countless other women because they're moved around. And when you look at people like Alfred Cotton and Jennifer Cotton, who run these types of resorts, if you will, rings, sex trafficking rings is what they are. And then they're also doing like the excursions and boats and traveling throughout international waters. It just makes sense. I also think that it is very important to mention that they have tried to conduct their own investigation, you know, like alongside authorities. Sorry, when I say they, I'm talking about so many people here. I mean the Bradleys. In 1999, they hired someone they believed was a private investigator, and this man scammed them. So you're already probably feeling doubts, uncertainty by who you can trust, starting from the first freaking minute of realizing that their daughter was missing when they're begging for help and cooperation from the cruise. And they were like, no, we can't ruin people's vacation. So then they like work up trust again and they hire a private investigator. And this man scammed them. Someone who can take advantage of parents who are trying to find their daughter. Again, publicly stoned. Publicly stoned. His name is Frank Jones. Frank Jones, you need to be publicly stoned. And he claimed that he was a former U.S. Army Special Forces officer. This is what he claimed to the Bradleys. He said he had contacts in the Caribbean underworld, who told him that they had Amy and she was alive and she was being held in a brothel in Curacao. Allegedly, Frank, he was able to provide convincing details, including supposed surveillance photos of a woman that he said was Amy, and then gave them like precise coordinates of like where she was like allegedly being kept like at that moment, and then tells the Bradleys he needed the money to fund this rescue mission. And over time, the family paid him, oh my God, you guys, over $200,000. And then it ultimately came out that he was a complete forking fraud. He never was in the special forces, and everything that he shared with them, it was just fabricated. The photos were fake. The people he claimed to know and like were working for, like no one was freaking real. I guess it's comforting that in 2002, he was arrested and charged with wire fraud and pled guilty and was sentenced to 5 years in prison for scamming the Bradleys. It's like, okay, like at least you were held accountable and that's on your record. But like, what's with the 5 freaking years for these psychopaths? Stone them. Am I supposed to say for legal purposes as a joke? I don't know. The Bradleys also tried to hold Royal Caribbean accountable for their disastrously inadequate response to them informing them that Amy was missing and to not let anybody off the ship until it was searched. In 1999, Ron and Iva Bradley filed lawsuits against Royal Caribbean Cruises, accusing the company of negligence in handling Amy's disappearance, as well as defamation and infliction of emotional distress. The cruise line defended itself publicly, stating it had cooperated fully with authorities, stating, "We're sorry that despite all these efforts to assist the Bradley family, they've apparently decided to direct their grief at the company by filing a lawsuit." oh my God, I would be so freaking mad. Never would I don't think I'll ever go on a cruise again in my entire life, but I assure you it would never, ever, ever be a Royal Caribbean cruise after that statement. Unfortunately, both of the Bradley's lawsuits were dismissed by a judge in 2000, which I can only imagine like how gut punching that would have felt, given they pleaded with them to like take their concerns seriously and they were dismissed then at that time too. And then like to just like have validation, you know, to be dismissed again. I feel so bad for them. Now, I want to leave you with why I ultimately also do not believe that she fell off the ship, and this like logistically or technically, okay? Now, there's several reasons that I've already given, like of just like the sightings and stuff like that. But one of them that gave me perspective was seeing where the ship was when she would have potentially fallen. And that for me further supported the belief that if she fell, she or some of her remains would have been found. So in order to believe that she fell off the ship, it means that she would have had to have fallen around 6 a.m. That's when 2 separate witnesses saw her on the upper deck. And I feel like people are forgetting that. Like when I see it online, like she fell, I'm like, I think I already said that, but I have to say it again because there were also different witnesses, okay? So I've been seeing that people are like, oh, she fell off the ship, and then she fell off after her dad saw her on the balcony around 5:30 a.m. And it's like, no, because like when he woke up, she wasn't there, but then like other people saw her around that time on the upper deck. Like get the freaking balcony out of your head. So annoying. And the door was also like open. It was first closed when we saw it, then it was open. Like things weren't there that were there. Like anyways, she was seen by the 2 friends on the elevator with Yellow around 6 a.m. and then on the upper deck, like around that time by another woman with Yellow, again, drinking a dark drink that she believed was coffee. So that means if she fell off the ship, we can only believe the upper deck based on these witness accounts who don't know each other, who haven't like, you know, come up with this like, oh, let's throw the investigation off and just make up this time. It's like, no. Anyways, she would have been on the deck at 6 a.m. At that time, the cruise ship had already passed through the canal and had passed under the Queen Juliana Bridge and was turning to dock at the wharf. The ship was not in the ocean at this time. Given the statement from the local officer who was helping the family in the early search, saying he didn't also believe that she went overboard and that he firmly believes that if that was the possibility, there would be some of her remains, clothing, something. Having that as context and like putting all of that together and then actually seeing where the ship would have been completely further supported my feelings of her not jumping or falling. I mean, I definitely don't think that she jumped. So like that, I don't think, no, I firmly believe that she just had too much to live for and she didn't even want to get close to the edge. You know, like if you were down and out and going through something and you were scared of going to the ledge, like why would you choose that? Is like, I don't know. It's like when I watch Below Deck, I feel like all of my Below Deck consumption has led me to just even further go away from her like going overboard somehow, because you're just like in this, if you fell, like you're closer to the shore, you're not in the middle of the ocean, like all guns a blazing. Of course, you know, you could get like sucked under, but again, it's like, you don't want to get like too graphic, but it's the remnants of something surfacing. Like and witnesses, I'm not well again. Why do I do this to myself all the time? Why do I do this as my career? I need to talk about it. That's why. Okay, I'm almost done. And now the final and one of the most promising revelations that made me feel like Amy is still alive, again, has to do with the website that I've mentioned several times, okay? In a very serendipitous twist of fate, if you will, the Canadian witness, okay, the little fellow that I mentioned that was from Calgary, who saw Amy on the beach all of those years ago, reached out to the family to find out like how he could help with finding Amy. And apparently it seems like he's very savvy with technology and data collection. So he worked with the family and the website team, and they started observing the IP addresses that were visiting the site to see if there were any patterns or connections to Amy. And they did. They noticed that an IP address from Curacao and occasionally Barbados would frequently visit Amy's website around meaningful dates like her birthday, holidays, the anniversary of her disappearance, her parents' birthdays. And this person would spend anywhere from 45 minutes to an hour on the website. There's lots of photos, obviously, of the family and updates and letters to her. So you can't help but wonder, like, is this Amy checking this website and staying on and sifting through and looking at pictures and reading these things? Now, from what I understand understand the reason they can't trace this IP is because the IPs are outside of US jurisdiction. The FBI can't just like go rogue on their own, which I get it. It's frustrating when you're on the outside looking in, but there is a lot of legalities and logistics that need to be followed. And on top of that, even if they can locate the internet service provider from that IP address, internet service providers don't retain logs for more than 90 days unless it's required by law. So since this access like happened repeatedly, like over years, the likelihood of, you know, another what it seems like a very promising lead and trail goes cold by the time there's requested cooperation that is granted for the FBI. Like it seems another roadblock, which is so frustrating. This whole case is riddled with roadblock after roadblock, and I don't know. I truly feel like this is not a case of it being as cut and dry as she felt. I don't. I'm so curious to see your guys' thoughts because I have been spiraling clearly. But since the release of the documentary, I'm seeing like more and more people in Amy's life are sharing their memories of Amy, their theories. Like I said, her brother Brad has been on TikTok Live answering questions, sharing on his X account. And I'm also seeing reports of potential new witnesses coming forward. I believe it is far too early to know if any of these are legitimate, but the reach of the documentary has significantly obviously increased the chances of uncovering new sightings or pieces to the puzzle. And with this much attention, I feel like real momentum can build from the pressure. Like that is the benefit of getting so many eyes like on a Netflix documentary to raise awareness. So I don't know. I feel like I could go on for hours and theorize for hours, but for now I'm going to leave you here, okay? Please go and check out the website. I will have it in the description. There's so much there. You will be reading for hours. You'll be grabbing your whiteboard and your red string and just slapping along theories for days, I promise you. But take care of yourself, okay? Take care of yourself. Take your breaks. Do what you need to. Let's all look out for each other in the comments. Send so much love to the Bradleys. And that's it for me today. If you haven't already, please don't forget to like and subscribe. You have no idea how much it helps me, helps gain, like trust and rapport with the algorithm, if you will. I really do appreciate it. I will see you in the next video. I will miss you terribly. Until then, make sure to love each other, love yourself, and I will see you soon. Bye.